Lungere Yediga puts in Kunabao Uvatana Yang Menya yet Pupong Songete a Tau Kuri body. The near level Uvatana Menya Pai Shi Yogi yet a Chow a Tau Bani body. Menya Punya Yaji Ria Menya, Watananya Menya Yaji, the Ingari, Taukuri solo. She liver. The girl Watananya Banshi Pichimi, Menya Banish, by Shin Pichimi, Zoloche, Legaromia. Could you get the area? Menya Banshi, Watananya Banshi, Menya She, a Joan a Taubani. The Johnny Piz on Lord, a John Piz on Venero Yao. The Johnny Piz on Missology, 2 days down below, John Piz on the Chi, Joe to Pola. The Yogi Tawangaro. Pore, I Shumates in the tail. Shumahu to Kureva. Sarah had a unit of Manasica Sovare. Tere Shura Teona Shunida, Teo Shubusra Asam who really Chiame. You are Zuhu Sandavolesiam. Tava that Teo Shura. Second name I shoot on it, 2 or 2 children. Baba, since I yada home. Since I look in level, I look at it. To eradicate Tony at a conference. They don't have to choose a Luciano, choose a yogi. Yet to Rone, Uvatananya, the Yamatis Savido, Menya do the level yet on him about. Tana body Tata Sana Shibi Solution, the Cho Solution, the Rindabalo, the young lady Yawa, Posidiari Pola Daboli, the Cho Napalo, the Rindabalo, Cho the Rindabalo, the Ladweso Yarawa. The Ladwema Tuja of Pimla Solution. Eddie Yogi Yaro, Nara She Yogi Pita. She said, I told her, Mama, they do Mahobo. Did come Tansia, they don't be near. I told her, I'm told her the road tower. And there's on the neighbor Yogi ha, a chain gate. She lead now, you don't look at Nezo. Tanila Loma, Chibi Malona Musoliciano, the Yogi, the gate, Santa Zepoli, Lupita, Lulu Sitata, or Lutia, Chivita, Luta Lupia. But what's in Damio, Lula, Lupiata, not a Chiato let you, not a Chiato let you, no. A Chinese network to live at the Lu Pongzamune Atoloro. Bero Matiaru Yabo. Etagu Yeshi was the Josa Atochaboya. The young hog and Bolly Lilin and a Tetomare.
In the previous days, Sayadawgyi spoke about the 7 Bojjhangas. These combined are the cause for vipassana knowledge and the cause for path knowledge to arise. Or they are the supporting causes for a yogi who comes to know vipassana knowledge and path knowledge. So if one wants to gain vipassana knowledge and path knowledge, these factors are the strong support. If we want to possess vipassana knowledge and path knowledge, we can't get it for nothing. So the causes for gaining this knowledge must be fulfilled. It won't happen without fulfilling these causes. When the causes are fulfilled, then there's no need to wish for anything to happen. The results will arise naturally. The yogi's duty is simply to observe every arising object so that the mind is effectively observing the object. In Pali, it is said, yoniso manasikara. That means that one has to observe the object straight on. That means that for this type of observation to occur, there has to be ardent effort so that the mind reaches the object, and aiming so that the mind has the object in focus. And with these, one will be able to observe effectively. So the objects arise on their own. There's nothing to think about there. There's no need for reflection. Just observe what arises. And the teachers are urging the yogis all the time to work like this. And one who follows the instructions that are given precisely such yogis can realize vipassana knowledge within a few days. And within a short time, path knowledge can arise. There are some yogis with keen faith and desire to gain the results. And for those yogis who practice sincerely, respectfully, the Bojjhangas arise within a week, or some within 2 weeks. For some yogis, it takes 3 weeks, and for some it takes 4. If in 1 month these factors have not yet arisen, then it means that the yogi is not. So it means that the yogi is chronic, and that means it doesn't matter how long the yogi continues practicing. If the yogi hasn't been able to gain these results in 1 month, they are chronic, and continuing practice is not going to bring any results if they continue in the same way. The teachers are urging the yogis, and the yogis must work at least 14 hours a day at sitting and walking. They have to work that many hours. And if a yogi doesn't work that many hours a day, then it means that the yogi does not want to become truly human. The yogi does not want to gain a truly humane heart and mentality, nor special knowledge that makes one a better than average human being. And if one practices in this ineffective way, then the next time one practices, it's going to be the same, no result. And next time, the same. Change to another method, it's going to be the same result. So in order that the remaining time be used as wisely as possible, effectively, before the talk, Sayadawgyi wants to urge the yogis to follow the instructions and make use of your time.
This Bojjhanတရားတွေကဘယ်ခါမှဖြစ်တယ်လို့ဆိုတော့အထုဆာမှလည်းမဖြစ်သေးပါဘူးစိတ်ကြည်စင်ကြယ်အောင် Pahu Bunga Sapene Ayone, the relief man by Yavido, Secretary Sijada by Sayadawgyi by Lemchideva. Edim Tami, the Lapis of Yaladari Maladeva, Chedev, Sayadawgyi by Lemchideva. Yamata Sensavido, Nanayo Panchati by Edinya by Malam Chedev. A town that you need no video people never to really yell. I told Nanny a pine Malam Chedev. Don't you say Yona Diari, Bobido, Piotua, Mamere, Chia, Leo, Timmy, we got an onion, she's up my level, the Posidiarium Chedev. Uriabia, Yambai, Yaula, Kajama. Taria Pisa Puba de Duro Tandamama Pibare Titana Pibare, a shade of only Villa de Paradama. Uriavania, a Yambai Yolo Shea, no take go Pita or about the Medede Dari Pio Luniaram Ho Pita Maju the review Thomas and Lazarus died. Kurega Minajari, Nanesara, Tirai, Tirai, Kure Sunday, Sounding and Jordan and Charai. Podmia Ayoni. Ado Sama, Tavido Madekama, Pompu Asawa. Senior Chowde Kama, Lever Chill Sigavido, Jordan and Charai, Mati, Maloya, you did say Sasa. Money, Yogi Masalochi. Majagi Mave, the Uriabia Yava, Yola Dabare, Yola Dabare, Erika Jalusi. Our collar over pushing the area, a share of whole nephew. The Malaya, we add to the Bogori, shoot a large of Gavi. The Akobo, Chen, go out of Pole. Take you over. You did the Sisi Sasa Mayamna Atukela as a body. They were easy, Maloya Atukela as a body. Madi Kauna Visolishi, Mira, let me want it away. Loda Lomantida, Lolochan Letida. Madi Kauna the Bogori. Mamakauna Bogoria, Mira, let me mammy. Luda Lumamati Chuquida, Sana, Sonangera, Dali Mata. Baba, Mamia, Yona, Medari. Edariado. Take it up to no Aji, only the world. The New Jaja, the Jaja, Malutu, Mia, Nagoa, Sualine. To an to whole of it, so we don't only Atoni, the Pokuri, Mia, people, poor. Nagoa, I can't see Nelucia, no, they Maluel. Womia, Sisureka. A home was who have his Lucia, Nagoa, I can't see Sisureka. Kulure, young travel. A few days where my Kulure, young treasure to her. A few days open, Melo, a young chopito. Not at the Tatsolucian, let me don't do about it. Nago a terma sweated a young Chopin, Kulure, young Yahoo, or a body. We don't carry a Joni at the time. The yogi, a Kuni Pen and Luciano. The Tibetan sister body, Saduna Lepi Ponsa Vido. They are a young Tompio, Mangane, they are young Tompio. Mangane, young Trella, Kuni Pen and Mother. Hello, Kuni Pen and Yogi de Vega. Ascendant, she will take Yetiva.
When do the Bojjhangas arise? At the start of the practice, they haven't risen yet. First of all, one has to make the mind clean by observing the rising and the falling and other objects, And when one can observe the rising and falling well, still the Bojjhangas haven't arisen yet. Although the mind is clean and there is citta visuddhi, still it hasn't arisen yet, the Bojjhangas. And from here, from the stage of having the mind clean, when one reaches the stage of being able to distinguish between mind and matter, nama and rupa, the Bojjhangas still have not yet arisen. Further, when one can see how mind and matter is related as cause and effect quite well, still the Bojjhangas haven't arisen yet. And when one sees how mind and matter, which are related as cause and effect, arise and then pass away, they are impermanent, suffering, and selfless, still the Bojjhangas have not yet arisen. It is only when one reaches the stage of uddiyabhya jnana, seeing the fast arising and passing away of phenomena, do the Bojjhangas start to arise. And then they occur with stronger and stronger momentum. They are very apparent at the stage of uddiyabhya jnana. The yogi simply has to do as instructed, which is note at every arising, always guard the mind with vigilant mindfulness. Every time there is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, bending, stretching, leaning, lifting the head, lifting, moving, placing, blinking, opening and closing the eyes. In sitting, one has to start with observing the rising and the falling and observe whatever arises. In walking, one puts the attention on the lifting, the moving, and the placing. And yogis who work so as not to miss a single object, who try to observe all things that arise, such a yogi reaches uddiyabhya jnana, the stage of seeing the fast arising and passing away in a short time. And at that time, the Dhammas, called the Bojjhangas, occur amazingly with strong momentum. So some yogis have been here for more than a month now, and some yogis need to compare their experience with what Sayadawgyi has been saying in the talk. And they need to ask themselves, have I been practicing respectfully, meticulously, without taking breaks? Am I practicing so as not to miss even the small objects? Those who have good noting know when they catch the object exactly, and they also know when they miss. Careless yogis can't speak like this. There's bending and there's stretching. They can't say what they experience at those times. And here most yogis, the majority of yogis are in this category of not being able to observe effectively. And it appears to Sayadawgyi that most of the yogis who are in this situation have practiced according to other methods previously, and that is affecting them. They aren't able to take in the method of satipatthana effectively. And it's similar to when one wants to dye a piece of cloth. So if the old color remains, if the cloth already has been dyed some color, then you can't get a true color by dyeing it. You won't get the color that you want if that old color is still remaining. If you want to dye white cloth, it's very easy to get a good color. And you can also take the cloth that is already dyed and use dye remover to get the old dye out. And then it's easy to dye the cloth too. So if one doesn't remove the old color, that is to say, if one doesn't put aside the old practice that one has done, it won't be able to get a good color. So Sayadawgyi has seen this before, and so he knows the situation. And he is here to help the yogis so that the correct color of the Dhamma emerges. And he can help with this. It is very important for the yogis to be ready to receive this help.
အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ဘုဇင်တရားတွေဟာဘယ်အခါမျိုးမှာဖြစ်ပါသလဲနဲ့ဖြစ်တတ်တယ်နဲ့ထစ်ထစ်တန်တန်သစ္စာလေးပါးတရားလည်းပဲဘယ်အခါမျိုးမှာမြင်တတ်တယ်နဲ့ဒီလိုမေးခွန်းတွေမေးထားပါတယ်ဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်နဲ့ရှင်တွဲနေတဲ့တတိပေါ့လေတတိဓမ္မဝိသေယပေါ်သမျှယုံနာတဘာဝလေးတွေကိုတိတိဖွဲလေးတွေကအစပါလေမှတ်နေတာတိတိသွားတာပေါ့လေပြီးတော့ဝရိယအစပြုကြိုးပမ်းအထောက်တစင်တိုးရဲ့အပြင်းမှလုံရောက်အောင်ကြိုးပမ်းအထောက်မှုအစစ်စစ်တိုးရဲ့ပန်းနဲ့ရောက်တဲ့ဒီကြိုးပမ်းအထောက်မှုတဲ့ဝရိယရဲ့အရှိန်ရလာပက္ခဟဆိုတဲ့အပိုင်းရောက်လာပက္ခဟဆိုတာကအရှိန်နဲ့တက်လာတဲ့အရာဟာခုလည်းမလည်းရောက်နေဘူးအောက်လည်းကျမသွားဘူးတဖြည်းဖြည်းတက်လာတာဝိရိယအရှိန်ကောင်းတာဝိရိယကျသွားတယ်မရှိဘူးအဲ့ဒီအဆင့်ရောက်လာတဲ့အခါအဲ့ဒီအဆင့်ရောက်လာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်မတ္တရားကောင်းလာတော့ပီတိတွေလည်းဖြစ်လာတယ်ပြောလာတယ်လို့ရတာအေးလည်းအေးချမ်းလာတယ်ပြီးတော့ချမ်းချမ်းသာသာလည်းဖြစ်လာတယ်ဒါတွေလည်းဖြစ်လာတာပဲတည်ငြိမ်မှုသမာဓိကလည်းထူးခြားခြားဖြစ်လာပြီးတော့နောက်တက်တုံးတက်တာပြင်းပြစွာမှတ်နိုင်တဲ့အနေအထားရောက်သွားတာအရင်လိုလည်းပဲဂရုစိုက်ဖို့မလိုတော့ဘူးကောင်းလာတဲ့တွေ့လည်းပဲဝိမတလာဘူးမကောင်းလာတဲ့တွေ့ဆုံလည်းပဲဝိမနေလာဘူးဆန့်ကျင်တာလည်းမရှိဘူးလည်းလျော့တာလည်းမရှိဘူးပြင်းပြတဲ့သဘောလေးတွေဖြစ်လာတာပဲဒါမှအဲ့ဒါတွေဖြစ်လာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ထူးထူးခြားခြားပဲသစ္စာလေးပါးတရားတွေလည်းပဲတည်တည်ခြားခြားပိုင်ပိုင်ခြားခြားသိလာတော့တာပါပဲဒါမှပထမဆုံးလောကီခိုက်တမှာသစ္စာလေးပါးသိပုံလေးတွေလည်းပဲအဲ့ဒါလေးယောဂီတွေနားလည်ဖို့အရေးကြီးပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးတွေကစပြီးတော့ပြောရမယ်
The Bojjhangas, which Sayadawgyi just mentioned, at what time do they arise? When does one come to know the Four Noble Truths? When the sati of vipassana that occurs together with vipassana knowledge and Dhamma Vijaya are able to observe and know, starting with the very small detailed objects. When virya has gone through the stages of initial effort, the stepped up effort to overcome laziness, progressive effort which continues, increases stage by stage. This effort has momentum and has become pegaha, virya, the uplifting effort which doesn't drop down, it doesn't stagnate in the middle, it keeps on going, increasing steadily. And due to this, the observation becomes good. With good observation, there's joy, piti. One feels delighted. And it's peaceful, tranquil. Happiness also arises. This is what happens. And then the stability of samadhi and equanimity, all these factors become strong. And at this stage, there's no need to pay any special effort or make any concerted effort to observe anything. One can just go along. And when one meets up with a good object, unlike before, there's not happiness, elation arising over it. When one meets up with a bad object, there's no opposition. The mind is equanimous towards whatever it encounters. It's impartial. So if that happens, if one reaches this stage, then very special things happen, and one knows the Four Noble Truths in a special way. So first of all, the yogis need to understand how the worldly truths are seen and known.
I'm a governor yogi solution. Sits out panning, no. Kuyari Mati the Casoe. Here I mammy at the Come so when I report it, when I do what another deep than a penny. She goes in the Jansi wood, a level up. Chocolate seku for an idea, Maka Unira. Dialeti. Tachina says so that Dalete shiny. Charger to Muyari level. Minira, they already has a column minira. Super Tita. Council. Cheney, the Didia, take on it, Lutia Lumisia. Lule Lomandira. Tomari de Corner. They go to each other, the Carrier, Malota, Mamila. Eddie Camilma. Mammy to me, I only that it took a tisari called away. He took a tisari tea. Token putting ye and so that time or took a tisao. Shuma Panchatia may so that Buddha so many kind. Took a mammy, Eddie Harry Boma, accounting below. Tayamu down who body. Tamam who died frequency. Would the chairman to say at a lady, frequently I will kill it. The penny of the water. A shiny yard like I said, I will come and answer. The rodeo will be looking at it. Put it, I will mammy look. Tayatam Kinagata will come in Pahana. Margaret said like a Torojigo. Wake was a Gilitari, Kunat, the Nani week was all we come to Pahana. Pere the order, they change. The Garga Yogi, not Gilita Machide, La Lutiano, Edeloti, Tinchi, or Amadia County. The Dinga Pahana, we come to Pahana, so Pahana Pa. That appears only that. So it is Sigero Tita. To not posing the other people some killer. I dem a taquagilla chair. This are liver tea. People to me, Gorega Yona Diari. To what is a treasure diari, the root you don't kiss him a shumato. To what is a tire? To what is a tirita never, Mashulu, Tayatema frequency. Era le frequemiaro, era pere corava. Tayatama Mushira with a pera, to Buddha this a later. She might say them at Daquagilla Lucia. To what is our tire, a tea padora. A tea shiro, Mati, Mabo, Mati frequemiao, a loeti alamshiro. Always a looking order. A mantiro con a diatogamutan alem shiro. Era lepicumia. Archie and alem shiu, Jonan the Wawa, by my church at the needle. Daichiဆိုတာလည်းမရှိဘူးအကောင်လေးရှိတယ်ဆိုတော့အစွဲလည်းမရှိတော့ဘူးတေချာသိသွားပြီးတော့ယုံမတန်တရားတွေလည်းအကုန်လုံးကျင်းသွားတာပဲအဝိဇ္ဇတနာဥပါဒံခေါ်တဲ့ကိလေသာဝတ္တေအဲ့ဒီဟာစပြီးတော့အလေရသွားတော့တာပဲဝတ္တကနေပြီးတော့ဝဝတ္တဖြစ်သွားတာသူ့အကြောင်းခံပြီးတော့ကောင်းကံဆိုးကံလည်းမပေါ်တော့ကမ္မဝတ္တလည်းဖြစ်ခွင့်မရတော့ကောင်းကံကြောင့်ကောင်းဘဝဆိုးကံကြောင့်ဆိုးဘဝရနိုင်တယ်ဘဝဖြစ်စေတဲ့ကုသိုလ်ကံလည်းမပေါ်အကုသိုလ်ကံလည်းမဖြစ်ဘူးဆိုတော့ဝိပဿဝတ္တဆိုတာလည်းပဲဖြစ်ခွင့်မရဘဲနဲ့ရပ်သွားတာပဲဒီနည်းနဲ့ပဲဝတ္တ၃ပါးနေပြီးတော့ဝတ္တ၃ပါးဖြစ်သွားတယ်တဲ့ဝိမြင့်ပြတ်တယ်ဆိုတာဒါပဲအဲ့တော့ဓမ္မဝိဇ္ဇာတနာဥပါဒံဒါတွေချုပ်သွားတာတွေငြိမ့်သွားတယ်ဖြစ်ခွင့်မရတာတွေပေါ့လေအကျိုးပေးတဲ့ကံတွေလည်းငြိမ့်သွားတာတွေအကျိုးပေးတဲ့ကံတွေငြိမ့်တော့ဘဝတည်ဖြစ်တာတွေပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါတရင်ကនិရောဓခေါ်ပါတယ်တရင်ကនិရောဓလည်းစိုက်သွားတယ်တိပယ်စိုက်ဒုက္ခသစ္စာကိုသိတယ်ပယ်တဲ့သမုဒယသစ္စာပယ်လိုက်တယ်စိုက်တဲ့စီရောက်တဲ့နေရာရောက်သွားတယ်ကောနာဟိုသုံးပါးချုပ်သွားတဲ့စီရောက်သွားတာနောက်ဒီထဲမှာဓာတ်ခွဲကြည့်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်သီလမဲ့ခင်သမာဓိမဲ့ခင်ပညာမဲ့ခင်တွေပါနေတာသီလမဲ့ခင်နဲ့အကျဉ်းစားဝိတေကမဂိတိသာတွေပယ်နိုင်တယ်သမာဓိမဲ့ခင်နဲ့စိတ်ထဲမှာဖြစ်နိုင်တဲ့ပရိဥဒ္ဒနာဂိတိသာတွေပယ်နေတယ်ပညာမဲ့ခင်နဲ့ကိလေသာမျိုးပါခါပယ်နေတာပဲသူအစွမ်းတတ္တိတွေပြနေတဲ့မေဃသစ္စာလည်းပဲအဲ့ဒီကိလေသာစီတခဏဆက်ဆက်သွားအဲ့ဒီကိစ္စလည်းလိုပြီးရှိသွားတယ်အဲ့တော့ဝိပဿနာခိုက်တမှာယောဂီမှာကိုယ်တည်းကဒုက္ခသစ္စာကိုပေါ်စေလေးကိုရှုမှတ်သိခြင်းအဖြစ်သူရသစ္စာလည်းပယ်မှုကိစ္စအလိုပြီးရှိခုနဝတ်သုံးပါးလည်းပဲပြက်တခွဲကြည့်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ခုနအရိယမရဲ့ရှေ့ပိုင်းပုပ္ပဘကမက်တွေရှေ့ပါလုံးပါနေတာအဲ့ဒါကြီးပွားနေတာပဲဒီပဲစိုက်ပွားဆိုတာပေါ့ဒီကြတိလိုက်တာနဲ့ပဲသိနာပဲပြီးတော့စိုက်တဲ့နေရာစိုက်ပွားတဲ့နေရာပွားတဲ့အရာတွေတခါတည်းပွားသွားတာပဲဒါလောကီခိုက်တာမှာပေါ့လေဒုက္ခမြင်ပြီးတော့ဉာဏ်နဲ့သစ္စာ၃ပါးကိုပယ်မှုစိုက်မှုပွားမှုအလိုလိုကိစ္စပြည်စည်းသွားတာတဲ့တစ်ချက်ခု၄ချက်ပြဆိုတာဒါပဲတော့မှာဘယ်လောက်တန်ဖိုးရှိတယ်လဲဆိုတော့ကြည့်ပါဘုရားဘုရားတရားပေါ်လာလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီမေဃသစ္စာဆိုတာသစ္စာ၄ပါးလည်းဒီထဲမှာအလိုလိုပါသွားတာပဲ
Yogis who are noting well can observe one after another the objects that arise in their body. When there's matter that arises, they know this. When there's feelings, good or bad, the yogi knows the feeling. And the mind, when there's various types of mind that arise, the observing mind gets there first and knows that mind. And there's various types of actions, general objects, and the yogi too can catch all of these. So the sati is very well established, supatita. And because of this very firmly, very strongly established sati that is able to catch even the small details, the samadhi becomes very good. And observation becomes quite special. At this time, whatever one is able to observe is the truth of suffering, dukkha satcha. And the yogi is accomplishing the task according to the Buddha, dukkhang parinyayang. The truth of suffering is to be discerned and known. If one doesn't observe and know this truth of suffering, then one will see it as good and one will take pleasure in it. But on the other hand, by knowing the truth of suffering, as it arises, one is dispelling the cause. One is no longer taking pleasure in it because one is knowing. And there's no place for the cause of suffering to arise. When our observation has momentum, as at this time, then the kilesas become very far removed from one's mind. This is called vikambana pahana. They are distanced. The kilesas are distanced. So the kilesas, such as tanha, craving, they're far away. And sometimes even the yogi thinks, there's no more kilesas left in me. There's nothing. So at this point, the momentary dispelling of kilesas is complete, tadanga pahana. And at this time, the Bojjhanga Dhammas occur. So if one analyzes what is happening in this moment, one is knowing the Four Noble Truths. When the object arises, every time the object arises, one observes it and knows it. And this is knowing the truth of suffering. Because one knows, one doesn't take pleasure in it. And therefore, the craving that would arise is dispelled. This is dispelling the cause of suffering, samudaya saccā. And when we analyze this, in the moment of knowing the truth of suffering, there is knowledge. Therefore, ignorance, not knowing, cannot arise. One is knowing correctly, and therefore craving does not arise. Craving doesn't arise, tanha doesn't arise, and therefore clinging, strong tanha, does not arise. And the wrong view such as the view of self, is not there. Avidya, not knowing, tanha, craving, and upadana, clinging, these are called the cycle of kilesas. And this cycle of kilesas has come to a stop. This is called vivata in Pali. And because the cycle of kilesas has come to a stop, there are no actions performed based on the kilesas. There are no actions which would lead to further good lifetimes, and no unwholesome actions. Because there is no kama, good or bad, being created, there is also no results, no cycle of results happening, vipaka. And therefore, the three cycles have come to an end. Kilesa vata, the cycle of kilesas, has stopped. It is eliminated. The kama vata, the cycle of actions or kama, also has stopped. And also the cycle of results. Because these have all have ceased, they have come to cessation. This is called tadanga nirodha. So 3 of the truths are being accomplished if we analyze, because one is knowing, dispelling, and realizing. One is knowing the truth of suffering, dispelling its cause, and realizing this cessation. And analyzing what is in the mind at this point, the path factors of sila, morality, are all present, and they are removing the gross forms of kilesas. The path factors of samadhi are present, and they are removing the kilesas that obsess in the mind. The path factors of panya, wisdom, are present, and they are removing the very seeds of the kilesas. So there's complete removal of the kilesas at this moment by all the factors of the path. And every time the yogi observes the arising object, these factors of the path, are involved. So, by observing the truth of suffering, one dispels its cause. Cessation is realized, and the path to cessation is being developed. These happen automatically. And this is on the worldly level, in terms of the worldly truths. By knowing the truth of suffering, the three other tasks are accomplished of dispelling, realizing, and developing. So it's 4 at a blow. And therefore the Four Noble Truths are all being accomplished and realized at the moment of observation.
Vipassana khaita maro, vipassana nyali phite khaita maro, alin yauk do amauk pyauk soda po le. Kilita do phit khwin, duriya thissa do phit khwin mya bu po. Sha kilita le phit khwin mya bu po. Mati set la lo shi yin do shin ya do wikhamana soda. တဖြည်းဖြည်းဝေးကွာသွားတာပေါ့လေတော်တော်နဲ့ကိလေသာမဖြစ်ဘူးမတ်တွေလုံးနေပြီနဲ့တော်တော်နဲ့ကိလေသာမဖြစ်ဘူးဒါပေမဲ့လို့အရှင်းတော့မပြတ်သေးဘူးအရှင်းပြတ်နိုင်တာတော့မဉ္ဇဉ်ဖြစ်တဲ့ခါမှပဲဆရာကိလေသာတွေပေါ့လေအပြတ်ရှင်းပလိုက်တာမျိုးပြောက်ရှင်းပလိုက်တာဒီလိုရှင်းနေတာဥပမာဖြင့် ဖျားယောဂရှိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတိတ်ပြီးတော့ဖျားရှင်တွေတက်နေတော့ဆေးစားလိုက်တဲ့ခါပေါ့လေရေခဲတွေပါတီကူးတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဖျားတော့ကျသွားပြီသို့တော့တဖျားကြပြားတော့ရှိနေတဲ့နေချာဖျားသုံးရချာဖျားဆိုတော့ဒါတော့ရှိသေးတယ်ဖျားမျိုးမပြတ်သေးဘူးဖျားတော့ဒီလောက်ဖြစ်တဲ့အဖျားတော့ပြတ်သွားပြီအဲ့ဒါတော့ငြိမ့်သွားပြီ ရှိကူလိုက်တော့တပြားကြပြားမရှိချနေသေးတယ်အဲ့ဒီတပြားကြပြားဖျားမျိုးလေးပြအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့အဖျားပြက်စေးစားရတယ်ဖျားပြက်စေးစားလို့တက်ချင်ကြမတက်တော့ဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ဒီဖျားပြက်သွားပြီဘောဆက်စကပါလာတဲ့ကိလေသာတွေလည်းဒီတိုင်းပဲဝိပဿနာနဲ့ဖျားတက်နေတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်အဖျားကြီးကြသွားအောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့ ဖိစားရစေရေခဲလေးအုံနှံအုံပြရတော့ရေခဲလေးအဲအဖျားကြီးကျသွားပြီဆိုရင်တဖျားကြပြကျမ်းနေတာအဲ့ဒီတဖျားကြပြအဖျားမျိုးကိုဖျက်စီစားလိုက်တဲ့ခါမှာပြတ်သွားတယ်လို့တဲ့ဝိပဿနာနဲ့ရင်းချက်ပြည့်စုံလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပဝတ္တခေါ်တဲ့ယုံနာဖြစ်စဉ်ကြီးရနေပြီးတော့အပ္ပဝတ္တခေါ်တဲ့ယုံနာဖြစ်စဉ်ကြီးတခါတည်းပြတ်သွားတာ အဲ့ဒါကိုတိလိုက်တာအဲ့ဒါကိုတိလိုက်တဲ့အခါကျမှဆရာကိလေသာတွေသုံးစီတာပဟန်နဲ့ပါတဲ့ခါတည်းပြတ်ရှင်းလိုက်တာပဲတော့အဲ့ဒီအစဉ်ကြီးရောက်အောင်အဲ့ဒီအစဉ်ကြီးရောက်သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ယောဂီကသိပ်ပြောလာမှာသိပ်အားရလာမှာတော့ငါအကုလို့တဲ့တရားတွေရပြီဆိုပြီးတော့ပေါ့လေ ဒီလိုတရားမျိုးဒီလိုနည်းနဲ့အားထုတ်လို့ငါတို့မှရတာပဲဆိုတော့ဗောလေတရားအမှန်နဲ့တွေ့တော့မှာပဲတရားမှန်တွေ့လို့ရှိရင်ဒီတရားမှန်ကိုဖော်ထုတ်တော်မူတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်သူကြီးလည်းပဲမှားမေးဆိုတော့ဗောလေတက်တော်တရားမတွေ့ရပေမဲ့လို့ဉာဏ်နဲ့မှတ်စာသိလို့ရတယ်ဒီတရားတော်တိုင်းကျင့်သုံးနေတဲ့ကိလေသာ ဒီစိတ်တစ်ပိုက်ကုန်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေတော်တော်များများကိလေသာကုန်တဲ့ကိလေသာတွေလုံးဝကင်းတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေလည်းရှိတယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေနားလေသွားမှာပဲကိုယ်နဲ့တိုင်းတာကိုလိုအားထုတ်လို့ရှိရင်တို့လည်းကင်းမှာပဲဆိုတော့ပေါ့အဲ့ဒါလိုနားလေသွားတတ်တယ်ပထမတော့တရားရဲ့ခုံကြီးရင်သိတာပါပဲဒီမှာဘယ်သူမှတိုက်တွန်းလို့သိတာမဟုတ်ဘူးကိုယ်အသိနဲ့ကိုယ်ဒီတရားထုတ်လို့အသိဉာဏ်လေးတွေဖြည်းဖြည်းလာပြီးတော့ ရင်းကျက်တဲ့အပိုင်းရောက်လာတဲ့အခါမှာနောက်ဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်နဲ့ရင်းကျက်ပြည့်စုံသွားတဲ့အခါမှာအဲ့ဒီခါကျတော့ ပဝတ္တခေါ်တဲ့အပ္ပဝတ္တကိုနိဗ္ဗာန်ကိုမျက်မှောက်ပြုသိလိုက်တာပဲအဲ့ဒီကကြမှာဆိုင်ရာပယ်တဲ့ကိရိတာတွေလည်းပယ်မှုကိစ္စပြီးတော့ပိုင်ချသိတဲ့ဒုက္ခသစ္စာတွေလည်းပိုင်ချသိမှုပယ်တဲ့ဟာတွေပယ်မှုပွားတဲ့ဟာတွေပွားမှုတဲ့အဲ့ဒါမှကိစ္စပြီးတာပဲလက်မှတ်ထိုးလိုက်တယ်လို့ပြောလေအဲ့ဒါမှတရားဝင်ဖြစ်သွားတာတရားတော့အဲ့ဒီကကြတော့နိဗ္ဗာန်မြင်ကပြည့်သစ္စာမှန်စွာသိမှုကြီးတဲ့တရားဝင်ဖြစ်သွားတယ်နိဗ္ဗာန်မြင်ပြီးတော့ဉာဏ်သစ္စာ၃ပါးလည်းပဲတရားဝင်နေတဲ့ကိစ္စပြီးဖြစ်သွားတာပဲဒီမှာစောစောပိုင်းကတော့ဒုက္ခမြင်အောင်လေဒုက္ခသိအောင်လေပဲကိစ္စမပြီးသေးဘူးအလုပ်တော့ဖြစ်နေပါတယ်ကိစ္စတော့မပြီးသေးဘူးခုမဲ့ရောက်တဲ့ခါကျမှအောက်ကလှုပ်သားတွေကလှုပ်ထားလို့ယုံတရုံမှာပေါ့လေအောက်ကလှုပ်သားတွေကလှုပ်ထားလို့လှုပ်ကတော့ပြီးပြီဆိုင်ရာတောင်းရရှိလက်မှတ်ထိုးလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဒီကိစ္စပြီးစီးသွားတာပဲအဲ့ဒီသဘောမျိုးပဲဒီတော့ရုပ်ရောက်လာတဲ့ကိစ္စတွေအောက်ကလက်သားတွေကတော့လှုပ်သားတွေကတော့အကုန်လုံးပြည့်စုံလှုပ်ထားတာပဲတောင်းကရရှိရလက်မှတ်ထိုးလိုက်တာချက်ကလေးစုဘာမှကြားတော့မဟုတ်ဘူးအဲ့ဒီအမှဖြစ်တဲ့ခါကျမှတရားဝင်တဲ့ဒုက္ခသစ္စာကိုပိုက်ချသိမှုနိဗ္ဗာန်မြင်တဲ့မျက်မှောက်ပြုတဲ့ကိစ္စဒုက္ခသစ္စာပိုက်ချသိမှုကိစ္စပြီးစီးတဲ့ပယ်မှုကိစ္စပြီးစီးတဲ့ပွားမှုကိစ္စလည်းလိုလိုပြီးစီးသွားတာတဲ့အခုယောဂီတွေအဲ့ဒီသဘောတိုင်းလုပ်နေရပါတယ်ယုံတရားမှာရောက်လာတဲ့ကိစ္စတွေကိုအောက်ဝန်ထမ်းတွေကမလုပ်ဘဲနဲ့တော့အရာရှိကဒီစက်ကူထဲမှာလက်မှတ်ထိုးလို့မရပါဘူးဥပဒနာခိုက်တာမှာဥပဒနာဉာဏ်နဲ့မပြည့်စုံဘဲနဲ့တော့မဲ့ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ရောမရှိပါဘူးနော်ထူးထူးခြားခြားတရားဓုမရနိုင်ပါဘူးအဲ့ဒါတော့နားလည်ထားပါလား
At the moment of vipassana, when vipassana knowledge arises, then it's as when light arises and darkness is dispelled. The cause of suffering, samudaya satcha, and all the other kilesas have no chance to arise. And when one continues to observe, one's observation has momentum, and the kilesas, the kilesas are dispelled by being distanced quite far away. Vikambana, the V, the prefix in vikambana means that the kilesas are not only separated but very far removed. But they're not completely cut off at this point. It is only when path knowledge arises that the roots of the kilesas can be cut off. For example, when one has a fever such as malaria, one has to take a medicine to control the fever, to reduce the fever. But the cause for the fever still remains in one's body. And one needs to, by controlling the fever, one is no longer going to die of it. But one still has to eliminate the cause by taking further medicine. And it's similar with the kilesas. The kilesas which have followed us throughout our lifetimes are the same way. We have to take medicine to make the fever go down and then to eliminate the fever completely. When vipassana knowledge is arising, when it becomes complete, then one goes from seeing pavata, which is the continual stream of mind and matter, mental physical phenomena, to apavata, the cessation of this. At that point, the kilesas are cut off completely. So this type of dispelling, cutting off, is samocheda pahana, removing by cutting them off. And when one realizes the removal of the kilesas to some extent like this, then one becomes very happy. And one understands that this is truly something to rely on. One has gained the Dhamma, which is a true refuge. And one understands because of the practice that was done, one gained this sure refuge. And although one is no longer able to meet the Buddha in person, one comes to know in one's mind who this person was who taught the Dhamma. They understand that this Buddha was really a true teacher. And one also comes to understand that there are people in the world who have dispelled the kilesas, uprooted the kilesas to various degrees. So as to some degree, to a greater degree, even greater degree, and there are some in the world who have removed them completely. So first one comes, in this process, first of all, one comes to know the virtues of the Dhamma. And without being urged to, one knows automatically because when knowledge arises through the practice, one comes to know the virtues of the Dhamma. And when one's knowledge is fulfilled, one goes from pavata, the endless stream of mind and matter, to apavata, to the cessation of this. And then one dispels the relevant kilesas, the kilesas that are related to that path knowledge. And at that time, one is knowing the truth of suffering, dispelling what is to be dispelled, and developing what is to be developed. So the four functions are complete. The four functions involved with the Four Noble Truths are complete. At this time, it is because one realizes Nibbana that the other three tasks of knowing, dispelling, and developing are accomplished. Before one reaches this stage, it is through seeing the truth of suffering that the other three tasks are accomplished. And this realization of the process of developing knowledge and realizing Nibbana is like what happens in an office. In an office, the underlings do the work. And even though their work is done, the whole thing is not finished until the boss signs off on the project. And signing it only takes a moment because all the work has been accomplished by the workers. And then it's legal. One sees Nibbana, and at the same time, the truth of suffering is known, its cause is dispelled, and the path is being developed. So, if the work of the workers is not complete, then the boss can't sign off on the project. So when vipassana knowledge is not complete, path knowledge does not arise. And the yogis have to understand this.
Lokutra by Napaimbo. Logia Pangaro, Dukkha Tisari, Kurea Dua Tisari. Poro Bozema, Melotama Tiniama. Malu Dilema, Sanjina Lemache, Laliota Lemache body. Kikama, Ilidaris, Kenida. မှန်သိတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အဝိဇ္ဇာစပြီးချုပ်သွားတာပဲဒါမှမဟုတ်ထင်ရှားတာပဲအကျိုးပေးတဲ့ကံလည်းမမြောက်တော့ဒါလည်းထင်ရှားတာပဲအကျိုးပေးတဲ့ကံမမြောက်တော့ခုနအကျိုးလည်းမပေါ်တော့ဒီမှာလုပ်ငန်းတွေလုပ်နေတာပဲဒီမှာဒါဒုက္ခမြင်ကကျွင်းသစ္စာမှန်စွာတောင်းပြီးမှန်စွာအလုပ်တွေပြီးနေတာပဲအလုပ်တွေလုပ်နေတာပဲဒီမှာတောင်းနေသူတော့ကိစ္စတော့မပြီးသေးဘူးတောင်းတော့ပြီးတယ်လုံးဝမဲ့ဟာတော့ဒါတော့ပြီးတယ်လောကီခိုက်တတ်မှာလောကုတ္တရာခိုက်တတ်မှာတော့နိဗ္ဗာန်မြင့်ညာနဲ့မျက်မှောက်ပြုတဲ့အခါမျိုးမှာတော့နိဗ္ဗာန်မြင်ကားတဲ့ကျွင်းသစ္စာမှစွာကိစ္စပြီးတဲ့အဲဒီကကြောင့်မြင့်ညာနဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်ကိုမြင်လိုက်တဲ့အခါကျမှပဲဒုက္ခသစ္စာပိုင်ခြားသိမှုကိစ္စဒုရိယသစ္စာပယ်မှုကိစ္စမေဃသစ္စာပွားမှုကိစ္စတဲ့ကိစ္စတွေပြီးစီးသွားတာပဲဒီမှာနိဗ္ဗာန်မြင်ကကျွင်းသစ္စာမှန်စွာကိစ္စပြီးတဲ့ကိစ္စတွေပြီးစီးသွားတာပဲအဲတော့တာဝန်နဲ့ကိစ္စနှစ်ခုခွဲပြီးတော့ဒီမှာတာဝန်ကအလုပ်လုပ်ရမယ်ပြည့်စုံလို့ဒါလောကီခိုက်တာအလုပ်လုပ်ရဲ့ကိစ္စပြီးစီးမယ်ပဲအဲဒီကခွဲနားလည်ပြီးတော့ဗောလေအခုလိုလောကီခိုက်တတ်မှာတော့အလုပ်လုပ်ဖို့သိအရေးကြီးပါတယ်မနာတာလုပ်ရမှာပဲတရားမှ24နာရီ24နာရီတည်းအဲ့ချိန်အများဆုံး4နာရီလောက်ခြံထားပြီးတော့ခြံတဲ့နာရီ20မှာဗောလေဉာဏ်တတိရှိရအချိန်ပြေးကတော့အနည်းဆုံး14နာရီလောက်ဟာထိုင်တာ9နာရီစဉ္ညာလျှောက်တာ9နာရီအချိန်ပြည့်တာတော့ရှိရမှာ14နာရီကျန်6နာရီကတော့စားတာတောက်တာတို့ရင်မိုးချိုးတာတို့စသည်ဒါတွေရှိတာပေါ့လေဒီမှာအဲ့ချိန်နဲ့ပေါင်းလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်တော့ဒီနေ့ကိုခဏအဲ့ချိန်က4နာရီဒီနေ့နှုတ်လိုက်ရှင်နာရီ20ပေါ့နာရီ20တဲက14နာရီတော့အချိန်ပြည့်လုံနိုင်မှာဒါမှတကယ်ယောဂီဖြစ်နိုင်တာပါ14နာရီမှမလုံနိုင်ဘူးစိတ်ဆက်ဆက်မဟုတ်နိုင်ဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့တရားဓုရဖို့သိမလွယ်ဘူး
There are two parts to meditation practice, and one needs to understand this. There's the worldly part of the practice, and there's the supra-mundane part of the practice. In the worldly part of the practice, what one has to do is to observe the truth of suffering when every arising object needs to be observed. So in this, when there is knowledge, then there won't be any going for the good objects or pushing away the bad ones. And there won't be any ignorance at this time. And there won't be any type of karma that brings about results. So the results also will not be arising. So there will not, at this time, one is doing the task, accomplishing the task that needs to be accomplished in the worldly part of the practice, which is to see the truth of suffering, and by doing that, to remove it, the remaining 3 tasks are automatically being accomplished. But the project, the work as a whole, is not done yet. One is doing the work, but the work is not done. When one realizes Nibbana, by seeing the truth of Nibbana, then the remaining tasks are accomplished. The truth of suffering is discerned, known clearly. its cause, the truth of suffering, is dispelled. And the truth of the cause of suffering is dispelled. And the truth of the path is being developed. So at that time, one can say, well, there's the work and the task to be accomplished. There's doing the work and the task to be accomplished. And what is very important now is for the yogi to be working without a break 20 hours a day. So there's 24 hours in a day. And we take away 4 hours for sleep. So there are 20 hours left. And of that 20 hours that are left, there should be 7 hours of sitting and 7 hours of walking. That makes 14, where the yogi needs to be working full time. And 20 minus 14 is 6. This remaining 6 hours is for eating and washing and going from one place to another and so on. So altogether there's 24 hours, and in 20 hours one has to be actively observing. So the yogis have to work a full 14 hours at sitting and walking. And if one is not working a full 14 hours, or if one is not working meticulously, then it will not be very easy to gain the Dhamma.
Lubawa asintan mi mabo yandwe mankane ni ne guru chogan ko yade ka ko lebe nama chin ma bo le yoga ya ma mnge ya bu ateti ma le mchok ya bu tsun sa ya ma da ba ne aku thi doတရားထုတ်လို့ယောဂတွေရသွားတာတည်သူရလို့တယောက်မှတော့မရှိသေးပါဘူးမကြမ်းပါတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကြီးကြမ်းပါပြီးတော့အသက်ရှိတာတွေပဲတွေ့နေရပါတယ်ဒီတော့အခုလိုဘဝစင်တမြင်မအောင်လို့အထုတ်တဲ့ဤရပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ကိုယ်နဲ့တဲ့မငဲမခွေရဘူးတဲ့ကာယစဇီဝတိစအနဘဂတဥပတ္ထပေတိတဲ့မိမိကိုယ်ပေါ်မှာရောအသက်ပေါ်မှာရောညာလို့မရပါဘူးကိုယ်မတနာရပါဘူးစွန့်စွန့်ဆဆအလုပ်လုပ်ဖို့ဒါလိုပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါတော့ဒီနေ့အချိန်များတော့နောက်နေ့ကျမှပဲစာထုနဲ့လက်တွေ့နဲ့ပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ရှင်းပါမယ်ဒီနေ့ကတော့တဏှာကြီးနည်းနည်းကျော်သွားတာမဟုတ်လို့ဒီနာပဲရက်ချအောင်စို့
When one has a method which brings the result of elevating the standard of human life, then one shouldn't be afraid for one's body. One shouldn't be afraid that disease is going to arise. One shouldn't be afraid for one's life, that one is going to die. To date, there have been no diseases incurred due to the practice, and there have been no deaths that occurred. Instead, people have gained health through doing the practice. If we have a method for elevating our life, then in applying that we should not have consideration for one's life or limb. It is said, kaye cha jivite cha anapekatang upatapeti. One should not feel sorry for one's body. One should not have regard for one's body or for one's life in doing the practice. And now there is no more time. It's already been more than an hour, so there's no more time to get into this topic. So Sayadawgyi will speak about it tomorrow in terms of the theory and the practice. That's all for today.